Hello, welcome back to another edition of Writing with Wade. We are now on creative experiment number 7. And I'm excited about this one because this is challenging for me, and I want to find out if it's challenging for you as well. What are we doing with this experiment? Well, we are basically going to experiment with third person and first person. What I'd like you to do for this one is take an existing story that you've already written. It could be a story, it could be a memoir, it could be a diary entry, something that is either fiction-based or at the very least narrative-based for those of you who write nonfiction. So whatever you've written, if it is one page of a first-person narrative, I want you to read it over, and then I would like you to try to revise it into third person and see what happens when the narrative point of view shifts. So going from first person to third person. Likewise, if you wrote something in third person, try to recreate it so it is written in first person. Choose a character. It might be the main character of the story. It could be the antagonist or a supporting character. Choose any character and write the narrative again from first person. Now, I'm only talking about taking just a couple paragraphs or a page. I'm not expecting you to rewrite an entire novel. But I think it's good practice to find out what your strengths and weaknesses are related to point of view. So that's creative writing experiment number 7. If you choose to accept it, remember, there's no right or wrong way to do it. Have fun with it. Dogs. I just did this creative writing experiment myself, and it turned out okay. If you want to stop the video now, great. Go and do creative writing experiment number 7. And if you want to listen to my experiment, I'm going to read it now. Here we go. This is from Camp Oh My Gosh. So I took one of the sections. Camp Oh My Gosh is a middle grade novel, and it is written in first person from the point of view of a kid named Connor. And here is the excerpt that I used. So this is the first person. This is the original draft in first person. That night in my bunk, after a jump in the uber-chilly Lake What the Heck, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Tasha. Did she like me or hate me? I couldn't tell. She probably didn't think about me at all. "Hey, Parker, are you awake?" I asked. Parker snored in response. I shined my flashlight to see if he was faking. He wasn't. He slept with his mouth wide open and a string of drool stretched from his lip to his pillow. He held his lucky golf ball in his hand. So that was the original pair of paragraphs. Here is the revision. So I took that first person narrative and then I wrote a third person version of it. Here it is. That night, Connor rustled with his sheets, turning over in his bunk, unable to sleep no matter how many ways he rearranged his shabby excuse for a pillow. It didn't help that he was still freezing from the 30-second swim in Lake What the Heck. But worse than the lingering shivers were the thoughts of Tasha. He couldn't stop wondering what she thought of him. Did she like him? Hate him? Did she even bother thinking of him at all? He could only guess. "Hey, Parker," Connor whispered to the lump of blankets on the lower bunk. "You awake?" Parker's only response was a long, relaxed snore. It almost sounded like the sort of snore from a cartoon. Connor fumbled for his flashlight, then shone the beam directly into Parker's sleeping face. His bunkmate let loose another long snore. Nope, he wasn't faking it. Parker was fast asleep. The boy's mouth was as wide open as a codfish's. I don't like that. You know, it's a draft. And the flashlight illuminated a strand of Parker's drool across the pillow that glimmered like a slug trail. There you go. Despite his deep, clamorous slumber, Parker still held his lucky golf ball between his thumb and forefinger. All right, so I conducted my experiment. My first impression, I don't like it. But I did come up with some similes. It's good for me to work on similes. I'm not great at similes, as you heard from there. So the more I practice similes and metaphors, the better I will get at them. When I'm writing in first person, I often give myself permission to write very casually, and I'm often not very descriptive. That makes for a relatively fast-paced story, but it also perhaps leaves a lot of holes so that the reader doesn't necessarily have a strong vicarious experience. So there are pros and cons to first person and third person, and the more you experiment with both points of view, the more tools you're going to have in your writer's toolbox.